Hey guys, what's up? This is LJS here, and I'm back with another deck profile. This time I will be doing on Dragruler Phantom Dragon. Blah. But before I get to the video, I just want to say that thank you all so much for commenting and giving your feedback on my 100 subs giveaway video. For those of you who hasn't watched it yet, please go check out my 100 subs giveaway video. You can win free stuff. Yeah, so I've been reading through your comments, and quite a few of you guys talked about my deck profiling methods. You gave feedback about my deck profiling structure and how it should be improved. So today I'm going to try something new. I'm going to try a new structure. So my deck profiles will first of all follow this structure where number one, I'll just go through the deck list quickly, and followed by a card skill as well as card number choice discussion, followed by some little tricks and combos you can do with the deck. So for those of you who only are here for the deck profile, the card numbers, you can just watch until there and then leave. And for those of you who want to know more about the deck and my reasoning and choices, you can continue watching. So with that out of the way, let's get to the deck profile for Dragruler Phantom Dragon. Sorry, no, it's not Dragon, Dragruler Phantom, yeah. So this is my Dragruler Phantom build. It's a pure cross-ride build without Raging Form. And I don't know, I think it's better than those hybrid out there where it's Raging Form with some Dragruler. I don't know how it works. But anyways, let's get to the deck. So for the starter, we run Judge Bao, of course, because he is a Phantom specific booster, and our grade 3s all has Phantom in its card name. So that's Judge Bao. Next we have, for grade 3s, I run 4 Dragruler Phantom. Basically, he's the first damage dealer. Basically, his skill allows you to damage your opponent with a cost. And followed by, and he's also a cross-ride of this card, the Break Ride. So I run 4 Mordred Phantom, the Break Ride. So he's a cross-ride of this, which is good. So you get a cross-ride defense. So next, for grade 2s, I run 4 Blaster Dark Revenger, mainly for the unflipping mechanic engine that Revengers have. I rarely use his skill because it's quite counterblast heavy, counterblast 2, and the Dragruler Phantom also uses counterblast, and so does the Break Ride. So you want to save counterblast for their skill as well. Next, I run 3 of the Masquerade, the 12k attackers. He is here to provide something to attack with, without boosting. So this deck, you actually get to call units a lot. So sometimes you want to have some free space on your field to call things out. An alternative to him would be this guy, Rukia, but I prefer running Masquerade because I find him more consistent than Rukia's skill, which I can discuss later. Next, I run 3 of this Willy Revenger mana. She's really good because she essentially helps you get a free call for that turn, which is pretty nice, and I'll go into depth later on. So for grade 1s, we run the staple 4 Perfect Guards. There's no need to explain. For 4 Perfect Guards, you must have it. And I run 3 Dorines. The main reason is for the unflipping mechanism of Revengers to unflip damage, because this deck can be quite counterblast heavy. And I run 2 Darkborn Trumpeter for free calls. 2 of the Shadow Lancer, basically to help you number 1 thin your deck, and also number 1 to get hold of your Break Ride first, so that you can at least to guarantee you getting your Break Ride as well as getting a cross ride off for good defense later on. And I run 2 of these Black Wing Swordbreaker for card draws. And also for grade 0s, I run an additional Judge Bao as well as a Claudius. So these 2 are quite useful because I find it useful to have it in the deck. And the thing is, this Revengers has a very good way of searching the deck, and it's pretty consistent. So reducing number of grade 2s and grade 1 doesn't really help much. Doesn't really affect the deck much, and fitting these 2 starters, very good starters in the deck, also helps. So that's for my grades 1 and 0, and for trigger lineup, it's gonna be a bit strange, but I run 3 crits. Yes, only 3 crits. Different designs so that your opponent won't know your ratios. And I run 5 stands. I'll explain to you why I run 5 stands. 4 draws, for draw power. And finally 4 heals. So yeah, so this is my deck. So let's talk about the skills as well as reasons why I run some of these cards. So, Judge Bow Revenger skill is counter blast 1, put this unit in soul. When an attack hits a Vanguard during the battle that this unit boosted a unit with Phantom in its card name, you may pay the cost. If you do, search your deck for up to 2 grade 1 or less Shadow Paladin, call them to separate R as rest and shuffle the deck. So Judge Bow is actually a very good starter. He is a really good skill. Just for a mere counter blast 1 and putting him in a soul, you get to call 2 grade 1 units out. And the thing is, the 2 grade 1s are not restricted to Revengers. They can be 2 grade 1s of any Shadow Paladin. Hence the reason why I run Blackwing Swordbreaker, even though she's not a Revenger. Now, the restriction is that he must boost a Phantom, a card with Phantom in his card name. So that's right. So this deck, all your grade 3s, 4 of them, they're all Phantoms. So he's really useful. And as you can see, he calls out 2 grade 1s, which is why I put another of him in the deck, because, you know, in case your opponent kills it, or, you know, you want to reuse his skill, there's always another copy in the deck. So yeah, so he's mainly there, number 1, to call her for card draws, or Trumpeter for more free calls, which I will look at later, which I'll explain later. So Dragruler skill, the main boss of this deck. So his skill is Counter Blast, Limit Break 4, Counter Blast 1, and retire 2 Revenger Rearguards, okay. This unit gets 10k until the end of the turn, and if the number of cards in your opponent's damage zone is 4 or less, okay, 4 or less, deal 1 damage to your opponent, and yeah, deal 1 damage. And the thing is, damage trigger check is still done. So his next skill is this Cross Right. So basically, if you have Moderate Phantom, the Break Right, he is 13k base, which is good for defense. So Dragruler Phantom is a really interesting card because unlike Raging Form gives pressure in terms of resending Vanguard and attacking for 21k after he resends. Dragruler, on the other hand, gives pressure in the forms of pushing your opponent to 5 damage before he is ready. So hopefully by the time you push his damage to 5, you'll probably have whittled his hand down a little bit, so that, you know, his card size isn't too much, and then you just pressure him at 5 damage. So yeah, that's the whole reason of running Dragruler, and that's the whole reason for his skill. And because of that, because his skill is to give damage to your opponent, we don't really run too many crits, because what's the point of pushing your opponent to 5 damage with crits if you can't even use his skill? Because the main idea of this deck is to use his skill to push your opponent to 5 damage before they are ready for it. So yeah, that's why I run 5 stands instead. So next let's look at the Break Right. So his skill is Counter Blast 1. When your Shadow Paladin rides this unit, you may pay the cost. If you do, choose your Vanguard, and that unit gets 10k until end of turn. And search your deck for a grade 2 or less Shadow Paladin. Okay, can be any Shadow Paladin, doesn't have to be Revenger. Call it to R and shuffle the deck, and that unit gets 5k. So this Break Right, I'm sure most of you know it because Revengers has been quite meta. So this Break Right is a really good Break Right. So you get for Counter Blast of 1, you get a free unit plus 5k, which is essentially a plus 2 to you. So as you can see, both of these units, they each use 1 Counter Blast. And Break Right, you will use 1, but for his skill, chances are you'll probably be using it twice a game. So you probably need about 2 Counter Blasts ready for him to use his skill. And yeah. So that's why we have the next card, Blaster Dark Revenger, for the Unflipping Engine, which I'll talk about later. So Blaster Dark Revenger skill is Counter Blast 2 when this unit is placed on VOR, Vanguard or Rearguard skill. If you have a Vanguard with Revenger in its card name, okay, it has to be a Revenger, you may pay the cost. If you do, choose one of your opponent's Rearguard in the front row and retire it. So he has 2 restrictions. Number 1, your Vanguard must be Revenger, and he has to retire front row. But the thing is, he's Counter Blast 2, and it's quite expensive, so I don't really use his skill. I only mainly use him for unflipping damage. And Masquerade is your 12k attacker for Revengers. So basically, whenever you have a Revenger Vanguard, he gains 3k. So he swings for 12k. And yeah, followed by Mana. So she's an 8k base, so a bit bad for attacker, but she's useful. Her skill's really good. So when this unit is placed on VOR, if you have a Shadow Paladin Vanguard, search your deck for up to 1 grade 1 or less card with Revenger in its card name, call it in the same column as this unit, and at the end of the turn, put it at the bottom of the deck. So when you call a Revenger, grade 1 or lower, behind her, at the end of turn, put her back in it. Put the Revenger you called back in the deck. So most of the time, she is used on a turn where you want to go off with Dragruler skill, because Dragruler skill requires you to retire 2 units. So essentially what you do is you call her, use her skill, call a grade 1, say Trumpeter, out, boom, behind her. You use Dragruler skill, kill them both, deal 1 damage to your opponent. So in a sense, you've only killed 1 unit, and the other one is free. That's why she is very useful in this deck, and that's why I run her instead of what's her name? Tar 2. Yes, Tar 2 is also okay. Tar 2, for those of you who don't know, is Counterblast 2 and call a grade 1 or less Revenger behind Tar 2. And the thing is, the grade 1 stays behind. But the downside is that she takes Counterblast 2, which is quite expensive for this deck because this deck is quite Counterblast heavy. But for Raging Form, Tar 2 is still useful because in Raging Form doesn't need to use Counterblast. So yeah, use her to call. Most of the time, I use her to call one of these 2 grade 1s, which I'll talk about later. So, Perfect Guard, you all know what Perfect Guard does. So next, let's look at Doreen. So for those who don't know, Doreen's skill is when a Blasted Dart Revenger is placed in a V or R in the same column as this unit, unflip 1 damage. So basically, you call her out, call Blasted Dart Revenger in front of her or behind her, whichever one you want to do, unflip 1 damage. So the whole purpose of Doreen and Blasted Dart is to unflip damage. So I run Blasted Dart at 4 because I want to, have higher chance of getting into him to unflip damage. I run Doreen at 3 because grade 1s, there's a lot of grade 1s that are really useful, and as you remember, there's many ways to call grade 1s, which is Ramana or even Judge Bow skill to call grade 1s. So having less of some of the grade 1 cards does not really affect the consistency of this deck because you have a lot of methods to search your deck for grade 1s that you need. So on the break right turn, most of the time, when I break right, I have a Doreen on the field already, like this. Let's say like this. I break right. Most of the time, I'll just call Blasted Dart Revenger in front of Doreen to unflip 1 damage. So essentially, the break right. So essentially, calling him was free. There was no Counterblast 1 cost. So yeah. So next for the grade 1, we have Darkborn Trumpeter. So her skill is, when this unit is placed on Vanguard or R, if you have a Shadow Paladin Vanguard, you make pay the cost, which is Counterblast 1. If you do, search your deck for up to 1 grade 0 or less card with Revenger in its card name, and call it to R as rest, and then shuffle the deck. So she's another way to fill up your field for almost for free without using your hand, and then which you would then use to sack for Dragruler skill to deal damage. Next we have, so most of the time I will use Judge Bow to call her out, and then when she gets called out, use her skill to call another Judge Bow out again. So in a sense, Judge Bow goes in the soul, and then you call her out, and another grade 1, and then you use her skill to call another Judge Bow, so that next turn you can use Judge Bow skill again, which is pretty good. Yeah, so so next we have Shadow Lancer. So his skill is, when this unit is placed on rear circle, if you have Shadow Paladin Vanguard, you may pay the cost, which is discard a grade 3 Shadow Paladin from your hand. If you do search your deck for up to one card named Illusionary Revenger Moderate Phantom, reveal it to your opponent and put it in your hand and shuffle your deck. So essentially when you call him out, let's say you have a Dragruler in your hand, but you don't have a break right in your hand. So you can call him out, discard the grade 3, search your deck for him, and then you are guaranteed to have a break right. Also, let's say after you have ridden him, you can then use him, Shadow Lancer, to discard more grade 3s and filter your deck. So basically you remove grade 3s from your deck so that you don't accidentally drive check into grade 3s and have useless shield. Yeah. So he is quite useful in that sense. So I run him at 2. So as you can see, okay, so anyways, next let's go to the next grade 1. Blackwing Swordbreaker. So when this unit is placed on R from your deck, if you have a Shadow Paladin Vanguard, you may pay the cost, which is Soul +1 if you do draw a card. So she's in there to draw cards. So as you can see, the grade 1s all have very useful skills, and I run 4 different grade 1s, and they all around 2 or 3 copies each. And the reason I can afford to run them at low copies each is because as I mentioned earlier, Shadow Paladin has Revengers has really good cards that help you search for grade 1. You have her to search. You have the Break Right, you can search grade 2 or lower. You have Judge Bow to search for grade 1. You have, yeah, all that methods to search. So depending on the type of the game, let's say you need units, you call her out, call Trumpeter, you use Trumpeter skill, call a grade 0 or less, and then you have essentially 2 free units to sack for Dragruler skill if your hand is really small. Or let's say, for example, you want to sort of, filter your deck out. Call her out, use her skill to call him out, and then search for Murder Phantom. Or in early game, let's say you have her and you have Dragruler but no Murder Phantom, you can just call her out, search your deck for him, use his skill, drop Dragruler, and then search for Murder Phantom. And there you go, you have your Break Right in your hand. So it's pretty easy and consistent to get Break Right off in his deck. Also, the reason I run her, as I mentioned earlier, she's not Revenger, but as I mentioned earlier, Judge Bow can search for non-Revenger units. So typically, after you on turn 3, when you boost your Break Right Murder Phantom, chances are your opponent won't guard. Use his skill, okay? Then you can use his skill to call out. It depends on you. You can use his Judge Bow's skill to call 2 Black Wing Swordbreaker, and then you draw 2 cards. But the downside to that is that she is not a Revenger, so she cannot be killed for Dragruler skill. Dragruler requires you to retire Revengers. So most of the time, I will just only use it to call 1. So the reason I run 2 in a deck is for consistency, because in case 1 goes into damage zone, or let's say you actually drew her and you must ride her early game. So yeah, those are really bad situations. But most of the time, I will use Judge Bow's skill to call 1 of her, and then 1 Darkborn Trumpeter, and I'll use Darkborn Trumpeter to call either Judge Bow or Claudius. So Claudius' skill is counterblast 1 and put this unit in the soul. If you have a grade 3 or more Shadow Paladin Vanguard, search your deck for up to 1 card named Blasted Dark Revenger and call it to R and shuffle your deck. So I run her because in case you don't have any grade 2, you can always use her to search for a Blasted Dark Revenger and call it to the field as an attacker. Yeah, so essentially, most of the time I use Judge Bow's skill to search for 1 of her to draw a card, and for Trumpeter to then call either Claudius or Judge Bow. So depending on the situation of game, let's say I have Judge Bow here. let's say I'm comfortable, and next turn I can probably pull off Judge Bow's skill again. I'll call Judge Bow again, so I can call 3 units out. But let's just say I really need to inflict damage, and I don't have any Blast in my hand, and I happen to have a Dorian on the field. I'll then use Judge Bow to search for Claudius, and next turn I'll use Claudius to search for a Revenger and inflict damage, and then you have attacker, a nice column here. So yeah, I run all these cards because I find them really useful, and you have all kinds of ways to tutor into them, and that's why Revengers are really good. Also, as I mentioned earlier, for the grade 2 Masquerade, you can swap him out for Rukia. Rukia's skill is that whenever you call a grade 1 or less Shadow Paladin is placed on... Okay, grade 1 or less Shadow Paladin is placed on a rearguard circle, she gains a 3k if you have a Revenger Vanguard. She can be useful in, let's say in turns you call a lot of grade 1s. But I find her to be inconsistent, so most of the time when I play her, right, she'll be a 9k, and only in 1 or 2 rounds she'll bump up by 3 or 6k, which isn't really useful. So I find that having a Masquerade who is a constant 12k attacker is more consistent. So yeah, that's why I run him. Also, the reason I run crits and not pure stance is because let's say if your opponent knows you have no crits, they will not guard to the pass. And the whole idea of this deck is to wither their hand size down before you ramp their damage up and pressure them with 5 damage. Add 5 damage. So yeah, so that's why run 3 crits. If you want to, you can decrease it to 2 and make it 6 stands. And yeah, so that at least your opponent knows you have crit and they'll be like, oh no, it's scary. Yeah. And stands because you want to just restand and maybe poke at their rear guards. Whenever you restand a rear guard, use your rear guard to attack their rear guards. So you slowly whittle them down. Yeah. So yeah, that is my this is my Dragruler Phantom deck. I hope you understand and you like it, and I hope that this new format might be better for you guys, and that my deck profiles will not be as long as it is. But there's just so much to talk about and so much to discuss, man. Like, wow. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Please comment and give me feedback on what you think of this new structure is like. This is just a little preliminary testing of the structure. I'll probably refine it further in the future for other deck profiles. So thanks for watching. Comment, like, and do subscribe. Also, check out the 100 subs giveaway video if you haven't. You can win free stuff. And yes, so this has been LGS. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.